Okay, should we make a start? I think there'll probably be a few more people to come. But anyway, welcome to the final day of the DRI Retreat. It's great to see you here, and great to welcome some new people to join us today. So we'll start off with some brief introductions. You've all seen me before. I'm Matt Probert, Professor of Computational Physics at the University of York. And next to me we have Simon.
Hello, I'm Simon Burbidge. I'm a consultant in HPC working for DRI. I've had a lot of experience in HPC centres and DRI over probably decades. So I like to come to these events because it's really good to get the community together and share woes, concepts, good ideas, etc.
Excellent, thank you. Owen.
Hi, I'm Thomas from Red Oak. I have been in HPC for 40 years now. And in that career, I've spent probably 3/4 of the time customer side and about a quarter supplier side. And a lot of the time we spend actually trying to intermediate between customers and suppliers and trying to stop them ripping each other's throats out. So,
Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Wilkinson. I'm Professor of Astrophysics at Leicester and the Director of the DRI HPC facility. And so we work with a lot of different vendors because we've got 4 different systems currently supplied by 3 different vendors. And so, yeah, a lot of the things we'll be discussing, I think, are going to hopefully relevant things to say on that.
Thank you. And Damian.
Hi, morning everyone. My name's Damian Jones. I work in scientific computing at STFC, based at Daresbury Labs near Warrington. But I'm actually here today in my role as lead organiser of the Computing Insight UK conference, which is held every December just down the road in Manchester Central.
And that's our panel. So, thank you everybody for coming, and particularly to our panellists. So we'll start off with the easy question. Can you describe a vendor relationship that works well? What does a good working relationship look like? Not into naming companies and names now, but in general, what does a good vendor relationship look like? Damian, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, so, I mean, is it okay if I do a little bit of an introduction to CI UK first? So
please, I think set the context.
Most people, a lot of people in here have obviously been to CI UK. I recognise a lot of faces. For those that don't know, it's a 2-day conference around HPC and the associated science that people use HPC for. It's quite an interesting event because it has a lot of different parts that all go on at the same time. So we have a series of presentations, we have breakout sessions, but one of the main attractions of CI UK is the exhibition that we host. So we have a 2-day exhibition, 40 companies, all the main players that you would expect to see. So my role is to work with those exhibitors to make that exhibition a success for the conference. So in terms of relationships, I think for CI UK, we're quite lucky in a number of different ways. So we've been around a long time for a start. We're in 35 years now this year. So a lot of these relationships have grown over time, and we've got to know these companies and the people involved with the companies. And I think that helps us with the relationship. It helps it make it a friendly relationship, if you like. Everybody knows each other and we know how each other work, which helps to make the relationship work well. The other advantage we have is that in terms of competitors, we don't really have anything in this country. So when you're developing a relationship with an exhibitor or a vendor, if you're not competing with anything else, obviously that gives you a little bit of a head start. So these companies that we work with, they can look at events like the TerraTech conference in France or ISC in Germany or supercomputing in America. But when it comes to the UK, we're probably the only sort of event like ours. So again, that gives us an advantage of, not having to compete with other events and kind of argue with other people about, you need to come to our event, don't go to that one. I think those 2 things are quite important in developing the relationship, but they're things that we haven't really done, they've just developed over time. In terms of how we interact with the exhibitors and how we make the relationships work well, I would say one of the things we look at is the pricing structure. So we set our prices very competitively. We're not greedy with our exhibitors' fees. The conference is kind of strange in that we don't have a budget. So we don't start with a budget where someone says, you've got 150k, go and run a conference. It's the money that we make from the exhibitors is what we can spend on the conference. What that means is the exhibitors are really, really important to us, because if we don't have any exhibitors, we don't have a CI UK. And we treat them like that. We treat them, you know, they are special to us. They mean a lot to us, because without them, there's no conference. So the pricing structure's important, and that helps us make a good working relationship. The other thing is we're extremely clear on what we're going to offer to them and what they're going to get back for the money. So we're not just asking for money and they come along to a conference and they don't know what to expect. We have very clearly defined exhibitor packages. So everybody is aware from the start what they're going to get for their money. And then it's on us to provide those things. If we don't provide those things, that's our fault, our problem. And I would say the final thing which helps us with relationships is flexibility. So being a little bit flexible with these companies. We have to be a little bit careful, because obviously if somebody has paid for a bronze package and then starts asking for things that are in the gold package, we can't do stuff like that. But every year there's certain things that comes up where we can help these companies to make their exhibition better for them. And I think if you show a little bit of flexibility like that, it makes them feel wanted, included, more likely to come back again, I suppose. So I think those are all the type of things that we look at to help us develop these relationships.
Thank you, Damian. That's a great answer. Mark, I'd like to.
So I think with the vendors where things work well for us, it's where we don't act like customers. I think that's the main thing, that whenever we're developing one of our systems or one of our services, we are working in partnership with the vendor. Now obviously we are customers, we are buying something, but it's more about having their buy-in in the success of the system as well, so that it's not just that we tell them we tell them what we want, they sell it to us, and that's it. It's very much they're going to be part of the whole process of deployment, running, keeping it up to date over time, and so ultimately the success or failure of the system in terms of its productivity does come down to them as well as us. That means we have to be demanding, so we have to have and set out very clearly up front, you know, we have very high expectations of what their level of involvement needs to be, but we'll put in commensurate effort on our side to do that as well. And that has worked very well, and we've systems that are much more performant because of the work that the vendors have put into tuning them. There's benefit to the vendors as well, because the work that they put in with us, they can then kind of essentially roll out similar improvements on other systems. So it works for everyone, and that's the other aspect of it. There can be a tendency to approach industry partners as if they have infinite amounts of time and money, and therefore you go to them because we're in academia, we don't have lots of money, so you're going to them to ask for free stuff that'll help you, and that's fine, you can do that. But you know, if they came to you looking for free stuff because you're academics with lots of free time, then you're not, I'm joking, I know. Then you know how you would react. So it's really about understanding they don't have infinite amounts of money. They have to justify everything that they do just like we do. But if you can understand what's driving things within their industry or their company, then you can essentially work together to build a case that will help them to get whatever support they need internally and will benefit you as well. So it's as Damian said, it's like having it's a relationship with the vendors that takes a lot of time and effort, because you do actually have to understand each other and work out what they need to know, what your pressure points are, what you can do, what you can't do, where you want to get to, then they can be very helpful because they'll have sight of things that you won't necessarily have sight of. So in terms of horizon scanning, they can be looking for things on your behalf, just like you and your technical teams will be doing. But if the only time you really engage with them is during a tender or in the run up to a tender, then they're going to treat you like, you know, just one of the ordinary customers, and you won't get anything nearly as good. And the last thing I'd say is, if you ask for added value, and this is something we do in the DRI tenders typically, mean it. If the added value is just something you feel you should put in because you want to get something extra, don't put it in, because all you're doing is their margin will be slightly used up in giving you the added value, so you're probably getting worse pricing. But if you genuinely want to added value, put it in a way that they can offer things and let you see how they could work with you. And that's important. But don't assume that they can just do absolutely anything without it having a cost.
I think added value is something to come onto later. But
okay,
just to go back to one of the things you were saying before, if you've handed over all the money, you've got the goods, how do you keep that relationship going? It sounded like you were trying to keep it going for the duration of the service. Why should the company want to continue to engage them once they've got the money and you've got the goods? How do you make that work?
So that's as long as you make sure there are things that you're doing that they are still interested in. So if the only thing you say is, right, we bought this system from you and now we need you to come and, you know, if you're only using your maintenance contract essentially to keep the relationship going, that won't be enough. But if you can say, well, this is our roadmap, this is where we're heading, so you need to be kind of open with them about what your long-term plans are. And it's not that you're saying, right, if you work with us, then you're going to get the next contract. That's not how it works, but at least you can say, this is what we're going to be doing during the lifetime of the system in terms of preparing for the future. And they can be they can be involved with that. And that has, again, you've got to show that it has value. Don't assume that, we were discussing about this over breakfast, you know, don't assume that because you've got a computer that seems big to you, that it's big to them. But that doesn't mean it's not interesting to them, because we've got interesting user communities, and so that there is value in working with any of the UKRI facilities or the university facilities, but you have to show it. Don't. It's not taken as read. And so that's how we approach it. That they've got to be getting something out of it, because they have finite resources too.
I think Damian wants to chip in on that.
Yeah, so just on, I think from a CI UK point of view, we keep the exhibitors involved throughout the build-up to the conference. So we have an exhibitor committee where they're able to meet and feed into the organising committee on things that they would like to see at the conference, things that worked well last year, things that didn't work well. So they actually have a say in the organisation of the conference, and you know, we keep them involved. The conference planning starts now for December, so they're involved all the way through, all the way up to it. And I'd like to think that they feel that their input is getting added into the conference, and then that makes the conference more beneficial for them, because we're aware that they have targets and things that they need to meet as well. So if we can make some changes to the organisation to help them meet them targets, then you know, that's a good thing for us and a good thing for them. So the exhibitor committee is quite a big part of CI UK.
So getting involved in other ways apart from just the actual transactional bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Owen.
So I've got lots of examples of where it's gone well and where it's gone badly. There are two though that struck me which stick in my mind in terms of where it's gone well. I'm going to talk about badly later if you want.
It's always interesting.
Without
Without being specific, there's no naming names. But in generics.
So the first one was I was asked to go around and talk to UK government departments about their experience with outsourced suppliers. And I was talking to the Passport Office, and actually they've had a bit of up and down relationship with their supplier. But what they were really passionate about was strong contract management. Professional, honest contract management. You have to have a senior person assigned to the contract management, and you have to have grown-up assigned. And it has to be a relationship of peers. And the thing that, going back to one of the points just now, the thing that they actually had is they had a book of favours where they actually wrote down every time they did a favour for one or the other, they actually wrote it down and then cashed it in later.
Wow.
And it was surprisingly effective. Because
Make a note of that one.
because actually when we're 3 years in, we forget about the favour they did for us when actually our back was against the wall and we had to get the system in order before the end of the FY. And similarly, they forget about the favours we did about, oh, could you just pay this invoice? And then the other one is the relationship. This is old Cray really, so it's probably this is never going to happen again. But Cray had a very symbiotic is probably the wrong word, but an excellent relationship with DOE and DOD, and that relationship was built on mutual trust and respect. It was okay. There was a thing in there. Cray was always expensive, and actually, but yeah, you have to allow your suppliers to make money as well, otherwise they won't be there tomorrow. So you shouldn't begrudge them their margin, some of it, but not all of it. But the thing about the Cray and DOE-DOD relationship was that basically, if one side promised to do something, they would do it. There were no broken promises, and it was always done. That everyone was really, really professional. They treated everyone with mutual respect, and actually it was engineers talking to engineers, which also was really, really important. In the Cray, generally, okay, they can be very contractual, but generally it was an engineering relationship, always. And if you can actually have a relationship at the engineering level with your suppliers, I see it, certainly there are a couple of very difficult deliveries going on at the minute, and I see that when those relationships between peer engineers are there, things go much faster. If you can avoid involving your category manager, then that's great.
Thank you. Simon.
Gosh, how can I follow all of those three very, very good answers? I'll focus a little bit, I think, on something that is a bit closer to people here, which is your vendor relationship and procurements inside a university environment, which is small fry, very small fry for a lot of vendors, but very important for us. So the cost of doing a procurement is high. It takes a lot of your time, it takes a lot of your effort. You have to write this very complicated but very restricted document, and then the vendor has to take this randomly appearing document, which they weren't expecting, decipher what it means, and then work out how much they can put into it in terms of resources and money. And the actual process of even reading the procurement costs them money, and probably several people have to, and then their business department has to go, well, is this going to be worthwhile? Can we do it for the money? If you have a relationship with the vendor and you've spoken to them beforehand, then they have an understanding of what you want and why you want to do it. And that gives them, one, the flexibility to not have to do that great big read through because they already know it and they go, yeah, okay, tick the boxes. But also they can offer their insight into how to best to provide something that suits your needs, because they already understand that, oh, maybe you're mostly genomics, so you're going to need a lot of storage and you're going to need a lot of I/O, because they understand kind of your business. Or if you're just a general purpose HPC workshop with university, they'll understand that well, and they know that price is the important thing. If you don't have the relationship, you'll just get something which is off a list, and you maybe get a little bit of discount because the CIO son went to your university or something like that, but it's not going to be much. And certainly if you develop a kind of a deeper relationship with them, there are opportunities to collaborate. They're always looking for people to try out new software in particular, or new ways of doing things. And a university environment can be a very good way for them to prove a new product or a new service which they're offering. Because the universities are quite forgiving, we're quite forgiving, we're understanding, we have like an engineering relationship with them, and that's valuable to them. So there's value on both sides. It's not just a financial transaction. And all the people who don't do HPC procurements, this is important for you as well, because it's directly relevant to the work you're doing and to your institution. So don't, when you hear the word procurement, don't just run away, take an interest.
I think that's really important, because I was thinking, listening to your answers, you mentioned software in the last bit. Of course, not everyone here is involved in hardware procurements, but you may be involved in other things as well, like maybe software procurements. And in my experience at the university level, buying licenses for Microsoft Office is kind of that's very simple. But there's lots of other more bespoke IT packages. And in my experience, that's the ones where things tend to go wrong more often. Does anybody have any comments on the software procurements they might have seen or been involved with? And are they any different to hardware procurements? Why do they seem to go wrong more often?
So with software,
Yeah.
the service is by far the most important part, because software doesn't work. We all write it, we all have bugs. So just delivery of a binary object, which is the software, is only the first part of it. So that's the kind of area you need to focus on. And again, if the type of relationship you would have with that software vendor, is it somewhere that you can actually get involved in helping them fix problems, or do you just fill out a ticket and wait for 3 years for them to possibly not fix it because their other customers don't want that?
Owen.
So where I've seen software procurements work well, and general, I'd say generally they work badly, but where I have seen it work well is where the customer actually understands what they want. Mm-hmm. And it sounds trite, but the ones I see fail are where the customer, and these are not actually academic customers, but where the customer expects a supplier to come in and do some magic and all their business problems go away. It's not like that. You actually have to know what the answer is, and you have to basically work with them. You need to, I hate the phrase, but you need to be an intelligent customer. Where I've seen it work well, actually, it's a collaborative development. Because, to be honest, the suppliers are recruiting from exactly the same pool that you are. Okay, they may be paying slightly higher salaries, but it's exactly the same pool. The people that they're recruiting are just as hampered as perhaps your internal staff are, and just as good as your internal staff are. So it's the scale, and it's about having a proper management process. Please don't use Agile, and just doing a collaborative proper project with proper project management. Mm. It's hard. It's really, really hard.
Is it harder than doing it with hardware?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's people. it involves people.
Yeah. Mark and Damian, anything to add to that?
Nothing on that, but I did want to pick up on something that
go for
Owen and Simon had said on the kind of on the broken promises and the idea of testing software as being a thing that we can add. So one thing that we've had very positive feedback on from some of our vendor partners is that when we say we want to test, we want some test software or test hardware, we give them feedback, we'll give them a report. And so if you want, you can get, companies are very willing to let you try stuff out, but you've got to actually, don't forget that last step of actually writing, even if it's only a few pages, saying this was really rubbish, it didn't do anything we needed.
Yeah.
But that's really helpful for them, and if we don't do that, fair enough, why would they want to engage with us? But that's something that we get commented on. So Durham have done a lot of work in recent years with in terms of test beds of various things for various partners. But the thing that the vendors love is they know if they put a piece of kit in Durham, they will get a written report saying what's good and what's bad.
That's good to get the follow-up, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things following on from that a bit actually is that don't expect to get it cheap. Software we will pay twice as much as you expect for your software, so don't expect it to. Don't necessarily take the cheapest bid. I've seen where, particularly with outsourced and offshored stuff, where actually that goes really, really badly, very, very badly, very quickly. You've got a time zone issue. You've often got a language issue. You always have a cultural issue. the geographic distance for offshoring also means that everything has to be in writing, and it's a royal pain in the arse to do stuff in writing, and you will miss stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're not co-located, and these days we generally aren't, but if you're not co-located, it's really, really hard, because it's people.
So picking up on that, having reflected on what would made a good relationship, can you maybe talk, without being too specific, examples where things are broken and how you fixed it or tried to fix it?
How long you got?
Well, maybe we'll start. Who wants to start on that one? Go on, Damian.
So I'm going to sound really cheesy now, I'm afraid. So
It's always rosy in Dartford.
yeah, I know. I saw this question, and I actually can't think of a relationship in CIUK that has broke down or disintegrated or disappeared.
Well done.
I think
Good.
more around things that go wrong during the event or during the conference. So probably that's the biggest thing that we get from our exhibitors, from our vendors, where packages haven't arrived, or I remember one year we had
Goodie
one where
bags.
the company logo had changed 2 weeks before the event, and all the stuff had already been printed, so the wrong logo was in the printed material and stuff like that. We have issues with exhibitors that want to run demonstrations on the stand. They rely on the Wi-Fi to run the demonstration, and the Wi-Fi doesn't work properly. So, but they're all things that we can solve and we can sort. So the Wi-Fi issue, we can get them a hardwire connection if they need that. The problem with the logo, we couldn't fix that, but we offered them a little bit of a bonus next year to make up for the hassle that we'd caused them. Packages aren't our responsibility, they're Manchester Central's, so I just passed the buck. But no, I can genuinely say that I can't actually think of a vendor relationship that's failed at CIUK, which is really cheesy. Sorry.
That's good to know it can be made to work. Anybody else?
I've probably tripped up there now, and there'll be a lot this year, so I wish I hadn't said that, but there you go.
I can give an example from quite a while ago, in general terms, where a vendor delivers, but the thing doesn't really work properly, and that can take up so much of your time, so much of your team's time. Certainly, you shouldn't pay on delivery. You should always have some kind of qualification process to prove that whatever you bought is doing what you expect it to do. And often phased payments are good, because if you don't give a company any money at all, they'll be really aggressive. But if you're able to say, well, yeah, it's half working, we'll pay half the money, and when you fix the rest of it, we'll pay the rest of the money. And your procurement people and finance people will definitely go along with that if you make a good case, which means that you've got some real strength to stand up to the company, instead of, these people who you've made a lovely relationship, just they're like, well, we can't help you. You've got some financial support from your institution. But at the bottom line, if it still isn't working, you do have your procurement and the terms and conditions, which is like the 200 pages the university's added onto the 5 pages you've got to describe what you want. And in there somewhere, there will be something that says, oh, okay, here was the performance figure that you said you wanted. And like, well, we didn't achieve the performance figure because the system always crashes before the benchmark finishes. So, okay, you haven't achieved that performance figure, therefore we're not going to give you the rest of the money.
But if you have to threaten legal, does that then, you get the fix, but they never want to touch you ever again? Does that break the relationship for good, or does it actually...
It doesn't have to. I think as long as you're sensible with it and reasonable, they will understand that they've screwed up, or their hardware is screwed up, or it's not necessarily the people's fault who you're talking to, although it could be. But yes, and then once it's going and you've sorted the problem, you need to rebuild that relationship so that they are a viable vendor for the next one. But you can also talk to your other vendors and see gently how they might react in a similar situation. So you can explore your relationship with the other vendors to make sure that particular thing might not happen, or that they've got mechanisms to prevent it.
Cool. Owen?
It's always about being professional and honest.
Yeah.
And so far as possible, taking the emotion out. I mean, I've been in a situation where supply promised a certain impact number, the machine wasn't stable enough to deliver that, and so there was a protracted negotiation about what we do and how much money we should get back. And yes, at one point procurement threatened to put a stamp on the machine and send it back, which I thought was a bit overly dramatic. But it's about being always professional, courteous, polite, but honest, in the sense you promised this, you haven't done it, so therefore there's a price to be paid, because actually it's not emotional. I mean, the supplier has promised to do something, they've not done it, so what are we going to do? How are we going to solve this? No, I'm not going to pay you the full price. But the other place, and it normally comes down to performance. Well, there's one I'm working on at the minute though, where the system is very, very, very late, and that is hard. It's late because there are fundamental engineering difficulties that the supplier can't fix. The supplier once they're finished, it's gone past the stage that they want to be paid. They just want to get rid of it. But there are fundamental engineering, and in that situation, all you can do is work with them on a professional level to do, well, I don't know how many replannings we've done, but you have to do replanning, and you have to work with them, and you have to support them as much as you can, because fundamentally, yeah, okay, we may not pay them, but at the end of the day, we're the ones holding the business risk. We're buying this machine to do stuff with, and our value is between 3 and 10x what we're paying for the system. So actually, we're not getting our value. So it's in our interest, and this is part of the Stockholm syndrome that we face with suppliers. It's in our interest to actually help them get there as well. And yes, professional, honest, and supportive. It's tough.
So do you ever find that is there a blacklist anywhere of institutions that companies say,
yes,
don't touch them, that they're always argumentative?
No, well, there's what's called the buggeration factor. It's well known in the industry. There are some suppliers, I don't think many of them universities, but there are some suppliers. Well, yeah, you double the price.
Yeah. Good to know. Thank you. Damian, you want to chip in something on that?
I was just going to, from a slightly different perspective, so if I take my conference and switch it round a little bit and make us the buyer, probably the biggest relationship breakdowns we've seen have been with venues. So,
okay, yeah.
So,
this is great.
Yes.
There's people in here that have been to some of our previous venues, you see, so they know now. But over the 30 odd years that we've been going, we've been around quite a few different venues. Probably the biggest breakdown has been with previous venues where, you know, they've quoted for certain things and then not been able to provide what they told us we were going to get when we got there. A lot of it is around things like Wi-Fi, where they say, oh yeah, we can have 1,000 people on our Wi-Fi and it'll stand up to it, no problem, and then you get 100 people logged on and it's gone. So that's probably, if I switch it round, where we're the buyer, that's probably where the biggest relationship breakdowns have come over the years, I would think. And the way we solved it was we moved to somewhere else and didn't go back.
That's what I was asking about blacklists. So the question was about, you know, are there blacklists of institutions that vendors won't touch? I would imagine that in some institutions there's blacklists of vendors that you won't touch as well. Yeah. So I'm sure that there are these things. Okay, go on, Mark.
Yeah, there were, in terms of when things don't work, going back to that bit of the question.
Oh yes, it was.
When things haven't worked, the cases I've experienced of where things haven't worked, it's usually to do with communication, and so that's usually the resolution is by getting more effective communication, and it can be that expectations weren't made clear at the beginning, and then things kind of go off track. The best way of dealing with it that we've found is because, you know, we've had situations, you never want to get to a point where legal is involved, because that isn't in anyone's interest, because that's money will be spent doing the legal bit, so that's a waste of money. But also, you know, you don't want to give the system back and get a refund. You just want the thing to work.
Yeah.
So trying to keep focused, and that's one way to keep the emotion out of it. It's not I'm giving this back, go away. It's, you know, we have this thing, can we all work together to make it work? And the thing that's effective when there has been a difficult situation is to have a genuine lessons learned process afterwards with the vendor. And we've had very good experience of that a number of times, where you just sit down and it is, you're completely open about what worked and what didn't work, where, you know, no one's pointing fingers, it's just everyone discusses it. It really requires a strong, you know, the vendor to be very honest as well, and we have found that if you you can facilitate a discussion like that, where they will basically say, yeah, this is definitely where we got wrong and this is how we would do it better in the future. And we would do the same. So if it's done in a constructive way, where again, the goal is that you will keep working together for the next X number of years, I think that can be very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. It's very helpful indeed.
It's very similar to marriage guidance.
So I heard that.
It's very similar to couple guidance, really.
Yeah.
In you don't really want to divorce.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's really painful and expensive, and you'd really like to find a way through.
Yeah.
A good analogy. Cool.
I'd like to think we're more successful than marriage, though. Is it 50% at the moment, unfortunately?
Yes. So maybe with that, go on. A question from the floor? Do we have or comment from the floor? Do we have a mic over here, please?
Thank you. A question about when you have a vendor providing, let's make a case, software, not hardware, and during the handout phase, you find out that it needs tailoring for the different departments, institutions, or whatever, if it is on a grander scale. How would you go about it? How would you tailor something that was generally agreed? So, case in point, I may make it more concrete. UCL has been adopting the ESM from a certain vendor after selection processes. We are going through getting rid of one ESM system, one ITSMS system, our Confluence, adopting GitHub, so it's a bit of a fuzzy transition. But when you get one of those major software transitions and you find out that this department needs this service needs slightly different, this other thing needs an additional module, how would you cope with that? Thank you.
Okay, Owen.
Changing requirements, changes are expensive, and that this is where your relationship with the supplier at the start is, because, and your book of favours is really important, because there is a subset of suppliers, I mean it's not universal, there is a subset of suppliers that deliberately underbid and then work on the basis that everything's a change, and they are incredibly good at change management, and you'll find that a change is yes, it's disproportionately expensive to how much you've paid. If you are with if you're stuck with a supplier that is in the mentality that has the everything as a change, then it's going to be, you've got a tough few years ahead of you, I'm afraid, because you're probably going to have to spend a lot of money. I'm sorry, but if you have a reasonable supplier, then you have to, I'm sure that you somewhere in you have a formal change process, and you've got some change boards, and there are some processes that you can go through. Where I have seen this sort of stuff work out is, again, if you have a good professional engineering relationship with your supplier, then actually you can accommodate change. But if you have been pushed by procurement to go with the lowest bidder, then you're probably going to, then you will probably, unfortunately, and I hate to be the doomsayer, you'll probably unfortunately end up with something that doesn't work, that meets your requirements.
A cautionary tale. We'll have time for Q&A in a few minutes, but there's a couple of questions I do want to get to the panel first before we open up more generally, so that's okay. Good, okay. So, question is about value add. Mark raised the term earlier on. We're discussing about vendor relationships. So, the question is about what is value add? What sort of thing are you looking for? What's reasonable, and how do the vendors view it? Anybody who wants to start with value add? Is it a requirement you have to have it, or is it just universities being cheeky? What sort of things make value add?
So, okay, I'll jump in with a very jaundiced view here. So, the new Procurement Act means that public sector people have to follow, that are following the Procurement Act actually have to have more value add in the requirements, or at least in the scoring mechanism.
So, is that a new act that's just come in?
Procurement Act, yeah. So certainly in public sector, it's in government. Sorry, it's value add is now a really important part of any large scale procurement. And there's a whole industry that is spinning itself up around how to make the value add stuff work. I don't want to downplay how important it is from socio-economic benefit and all the other bits and pieces, but it is a pain in the behind to do, and it can be very distracting. So I'll answer this from a supplier perspective. As a supplier, value add is great, because I can game the system. I as a supplier, I do 50 bids a year. You do one of every 5 years. I know how to do this stuff. And so I can actually write value add statements which sound really good but actually are completely meaningless. Where value add really matters or is so okay. So the typical sort of meaningless value add I can provide is, oh yes, we'll put you in touch with our engineers. We'll take your input into our roadmap. For sure, we'll fly you out to America. We'll do that. Doesn't mean anything. We will support you. We will stand up. Some of the ones I've seen, we will stand up some research, some joint research, and we'll pay for some PhDs, or we'll pay for some stuff. Okay, fine. All that means is they've just added chunks of 20 grand onto the price. And actually, do you know what? Actually, that might be useful for you, because it's a way of moving money from one pot to another. Not that I would condone that sort of behaviour. The other value add is that's easy to provide is, okay, what I'll do is I will spin up a centre of excellence. We'll have a joint centre of excellence, which for me means, okay, I will create an office, and I'll put an office, and I might come and staff it once or twice a year. You have to have proper commitments in terms of what the bodies are going to do and what the people are going to do. You actually have to drill down. It's just like any other part of the procurement. You actually have to have very, very clear metrics in terms of what you're going to get out. And before you go in, you actually have to understand what you want in terms of value add. So, for example, it's like we're going to buy a car. Okay, a value add in terms of, well, I know that you can just apply the scratch-free cover to the paint and that doesn't cost you very much. So I will only, that's fine. But if I want alloy wheels, then you just have to be very clear what you want.
Thank you. Anybody with a different view?
Yes, as a customer view. As a customer.
I don't have much to add, because I was going to say very, very similar things, except in terms of drilling into things. The statements that come in, yes, are generally mostly meaningless. So I think but what you said is the most important thing is know what it is you want, and have, talk to industry ahead of time so that you know what's realistic. So funding a cohort of PhD students might be realistic for some companies or might not be, and if it's useful to you, then you can think about it. But bear in mind that, as you said, that it's not free. It's essentially the price is reflecting the things that you've asked for. So it's not value add. It's just their margin is.
Well, it's budget dilution.
Yeah, exactly. They might be reducing their margin a bit to get the business, and you're getting some of that. But more likely, it's that they've added some cost in the overall thing.
So when you write the tender, do you drop some hints of what kind of value add you're looking for, or do you leave it to the vendor to surprise you with what they're going to offer?
We generally give some indications of the kind, so we leave it open so that, you know, anything can be offered, but we do kind of specify here are examples of the types of things we're looking for. And the main thing is then in your scoring process, do not have you know, something like what's the total value of the added, you know, the added value component, and take, you know, basically the one that gives the biggest number, because they'll say that centre of excellence that you just said is worth $500,000. You do your own valuation of it, because you'd be amazed if you really think about it, drill into every sentence and go, well, how much would I pay for what they're offering there? And it's amazing how many of the things are zero. They're either, they cost them nothing, they have no value to you, but they do sound good when you write them down. So then you can get a much more reasonable number. And it's interesting to see when you drill into all of it, because typically they all come in with about the same amount, because they're doing about the same amount of budget moving around. Some of them will have, you know, 100k of stuff, but they're billing it as 500k of stuff. But yeah, it's be really quantitative, just like you would be with how much memory there is on a node or something like that.
I think Mark makes a really good point. It's a means to an end. It's something that you're working on that particular contract with usually, so you will have an idea specifically of what you want, and the Centre of Excellence is a good example of that, and it's quite popular at the moment. But know what it gives you. If it ensures you get 5 PhD students in your centre, which you might not get otherwise, that's a good thing. If it gets you 5 years licensing for nothing for a ton of software, again, that has a value to you. But you need to know, you need to work out all the pounds and pence and everything, and the amount of, you know, PR you're going to have to do for the company in return, that kind of thing.
So the most extreme case I've seen, it was on HPC 97, where I was working for the research councils, and SGI, they had actually a fantastic salesman. He was brilliant, and his proposition was, don't pay me a bean, just pay me based on how many papers you produce off this kit.
Wow. Okay.
And and the research councils ran away screaming because they worked out how much it would end up costing.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But actually measured on the real output is important.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's tempting. Damian.
Yeah, I think I agree that, you know, it's very important that you have to be clear at the beginning what you're offering, and I think for us this comes through our packages that we offer to our exhibitors.
Yeah.
So it's very clear from the beginning. You pick which package you want, you know how much that package is going to cost, and you know what you're going to get back for your money. It's written down, it's on the website, it's there, anyone can see it. So I think it's really important that that is clear to everybody. And it works quite well for us, because if you pay a little bit more, you get a little bit more back. So, you know, you can tailor it to your budget, and you know exactly what's coming.
Thank you. I'm aware of the time. I did promise we'd have time for questions and comments from the audience. So at this point, I'd like to invite anybody to raise a hand. I think from the online people. Okay. Anybody got a question or comment from the audience? At the back, Steve.
Apologies, I may have missed this at the start, so I came in 20 minutes late, but it seems to me one of the most important things we can do in terms of the interaction between vendors and the DRI community is tactful interaction between the people in this room, the people sort of working on the systems, and the systems that the vendors are able to provide. So, you know, we have events like CI UK, for example, that enable these sorts of interfaces, but what are the extra things that we need to do? What are those things that because I know, working with Damian on CI UK, that one of the comments we get constantly from the vendors is they want to use that event to interact with the people that are using the systems, not necessarily the people that are always buying the systems. So the research software engineers and all the computational scientists and so on and so forth. So what are the things we need to do to improve that sort of flow of communication? So I think CI UK can be part of the answer, but probably not all the answer.
Panel.
So yeah, so I think you made a very good point there about the vendors being interested in interacting with more than just the people who buy the systems. I think that's something where we've certainly seen that in DRI, that we've our annual DRI Day event for the community, and the vendors come to that, and they're surprisingly willing to sponsor it, because what they get out of it is they don't just get to meet me and the usual people that they meet the technical teams that run the systems, they meet the users, and they get a sense of what's going on in the community much more so. So that's something where any facility across the UK or I could do more of that, because then that's where some of the real value is. The other thing we try to do is make it easier for anybody. Not everybody in academia wants to work with industry, and that's fine, but anybody who does want to, we try to facilitate it. So if somebody wants to have a project with an industry partner, we can help to discuss with them what it is they're looking to do, and try to identify a partner that might be relevant, so we can do more of that kind of thing. But a lot of the answers seem to come down to people. It's again putting different sets of people in contact with each other, so that the value that's kind of inherent in our community is shared with the vendor community as well.
I think.
The only other thing is something I would love to see, but I don't know how we facilitate this, is in terms of careers, make it easier for people to move between kind of academia and industry, because there tends to be, we all know this, there tends to be a flow of people through academia into industry. That's great, and so that's, I'm very much in favour of that. Very little comes back. And it would be great if there was, some, programs of like secondments for people, even if they didn't want to come back into academia or come to academia forever, even to come for, 6 months or a couple of years. I think we get much more deep knowledge exchange that way.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah,
along similar lines, so Stephen knows that the flavour of CI UK has changed quite a lot over the last 4 or 5 years based on feedback from exhibitors and attendees, and we have target audiences that we're looking to increase, like young people and early career researchers and that type of thing. Maybe some things along the lines of the cluster challenge that we run at CI UK can help in that type of thing. So we've seen a massive increase in the amount of teams that enter our cluster check. We went from 3 teams to 13. So we've got teams from universities that are interested in this type of thing, but because we see it from the other side as well, we know that the partner companies that we work with for the Cluster Challenge, they really take advantage of it. So they engage with the students, and a lot of the time they'll work with them after the challenge is finished. So they'll offer them summer placements and internships or whatever it is, and they'll work with them. And I think it's an opportunity to go both ways. It gives the students an opportunity to work with companies that maybe might be employers in the future, but it also gives the companies an opportunity to see the young people and the students that could possibly be their future. So maybe things like Cluster Challenge and similar sort of events and competitions, if you like, could be the way forward to help that.
Owen.
One of the things the suppliers are really keen on is success stories.
Is what?
Success stories.
Okay.
It's really valuable to them to have good, high quality success stories. So you will inevitably in your institutions have at least one, I hope, one group that is generating high quality, not necessarily photogenic, but interesting work, and they've got some nice colour for directors and some nice pictures. And yes, the vendors are always interested in that.
So is it a inherent or on the universities to send those success stories proactively to the vendors? How do they find out about them?
Well, I'm assuming you have quarterly account meetings. Oh dear. You should have quarterly account meetings, and part of those you should be sharing these success stories with them, and they will take them back and use them.
I think I would add another way, perhaps on a lower level, but more people can get involved with the vendors, is that as universities we're much more open than commercial companies. So when there are things which aren't working or need improving or enhancements and things, a commercial company will often just look for another vendor or another package. And they might say to the vendor, I want this, and demand that they come up with it, and they might do 3 years later perhaps. But as an open institution, we can say, well, yeah, we think this kind of feature would be good, and this is how we see you would implement it, and you give some use cases and examples, and that's way more than a commercial customer will often do. And in a similar situation where you've got bugs, somebody was saying to me earlier in the week, they found a compiler bug, but they didn't report it. And I said, well, why didn't you do that? I said, oh, they wouldn't fix it. I said, yeah, they would, because you will give them that bit of code, and then that enables them very easily to fix it. So that's a lot of value to them, and hardly any skin off your nose.
Yeah.
So collaborating at that at low level that everybody can do is useful as well.
I would concur. If you have the staff to do that, I would absolutely concur with that.
Thank you.
And I'd probably say, going back to the cluster challenge point, we probably need to be doing more to encourage early career people to be involved in the collaborations with industry, because, you know, you could argue the people, you know, the panel, we've been doing this for a while, and there isn't as much interaction with industry as we would like. So maybe we don't have all the answers, and so maybe, you know, if we could engage more of the we can't change it at certain levels, but we could change it from over time by having this, you know, going back and forth between industry become more common, you know, from early careers onwards.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And it's fair to say that industry is one of the areas we look at every year, how we can increase the number of industrial people that come to CI UK, and it's always been difficult, so it's certainly one that needs a little bit more investigation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent question. We have a question over here.
Just a quick one on the clock. I know you mentioned before having situations with vendors where maybe things didn't go perfectly, and it being healthy to sort of have that sort of post-mortem process and discuss it with them. Has there ever been a situation you've had to coax a vendor into that process? And what was the best, do you have any tips or techniques or ways, and good ways to sort of frame it to them, present it to them, to maybe get a buy-in from them, that initial buy-in, to get them in the door, and then they maybe see, oh, actually this is worth it.
So no, we haven't had to coax them, which is quite positive. Maybe we're just lucky. And the case where it was most needed, they were already planning to do one themselves internally. I think if someone were reluctant, I think now we could point to, without naming names, we could point to where it had been useful in the past. And I think the most important thing is to make it clear that this is not a, you know, there's not going to be lawyers in the room, and there won't be procurement well, there may be procurement in the room, but in the same spirit of trying to find out how to do it better, and that it genuinely, be very genuine about it. You talked a lot about being, you know, open and honest. You know, if what you actually want is a meeting where you can yell at them and say, we really were annoyed and this was rubbish and we didn't like it, don't pretend that's a lessons learned. But if you actually want to find out how you could both do better next time, because it may be that the whole problem stemmed from us not explaining what we wanted up front properly, and you need to give them the, you know, they won't normally say that to a customer because customers are supposed to be right, but when the customer is wrong, it's helpful to tell the customer, I think, speaking as a customer. So I think that's the thing. As long as everybody's there to learn from it,
The tip I would say is that these things happen at various levels, and if you're doing the big shouty meeting between senior people and sales, or senior people, you know, the organisation, that's one thing. But at a more constructive level, if you can get an engineering contact between, you know, your staff and their engineering staff, where underneath the hood they can just work on solutions and ideas and things, that's a way to get progress.
So I have a slightly different take on it. If your supplier is unable, and let's use a different word. Let's use less emotive word. Unable to engage properly in a proper contract management perspective, then it's largely a case that you don't have a senior enough representative from your supplier. Because by the time you've been 10, 15 years in the industry, you understand how to do this stuff. And if they are incapable, it suggests that maybe they don't value it enough. They've put a junior, inexperienced contract manager on their side on those. So you need to push for more senior representation. Because actually, unless you're dealing with a company that is a startup and has only been going for 5 years, they will know how to do this stuff at a senior enough level.
Thank you. Some very practical tips there. One last question. We are running a little close on time. Everybody happy? Any chance? Anything from online? Okay. Then let's thank our panel again. Thank you.